Break, break, break. Get ready for some important news.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Task and Purpose First Squad. I'm your host, Chris Cappy. So basically what happened was on February 1st, the Myanmar military had a coup. They wanted to be back in control. There was a democratically elected government that was overthrown by the military. And the army there, they alleged that there was widespread voter fraud and they had to take control. Basically what happened was there's a political party called the Union Solidarity and Development Party, which lost the election really bad. And over there, the USDP is seen as a proxy for the military. And it's widely seen as that party is the military party. If you're voting for them, you're voting for the military to be in control. But they lost really bad. So they said there was widespread voter fraud. It would be like, imagine if in the United States, there was a party that basically was like you were voting for the Army or for the Marine Corps. I would vote for the Army personally over the Marines, but I don't know, maybe you differ. But that's how weird it is in Myanmar. We're talking about a country where they have a candidate, a political party that basically represents the military. When the military lost, they wanted control, so they used an excuse to take control again. And then there was predictably a lot of protests happening. And the military put these protests down violently, which then there was a response from the United States, and they cut off funding to Myanmar because this happened. So when you look at the response from Russia, Russia responded by, let's be a little more careful here. Let's not quickly condemn this coup right away. China was the same way, because Myanmar is right next to China and they have huge interests there. I'm talking about China wants access to the Indian Ocean. So this is through Myanmar, they're able to do that. So they're not going to quickly condemn what's happening there. But don't think that they're excited about this coup. Their main goal is to have stability in the country because they want to be able to run their pipelines, their oil and gas over land there. And this gives them a little bit of leverage where they don't have to worry so much about the South China Sea because they have this overland route. So what I'm saying here is that for China, Myanmar is extremely important to them and their future strategic goals. So this instability there is basically good for no one. And it's very different in Syria in that way because we don't have ground forces there in Myanmar. The Russians don't either. Neither does China. It's a situation that could quickly spiral out of control, and that's why we're looking at it today. And in order to understand what's happening there and why this coup has happened, we need a real quick nutshell history for Burma. So what's happening here is there was British rule in Burma that lasted from 1824, like around when the U.S. Civil War happened, all the way to 1948, just after World War II. That's when the British were in charge there. And this directly impacts the conflict that's happening there because during World War II, the British were stationed there and they were working alongside the Rohingya Muslims there in World War II because the Rohingya Muslims and the British fought against the Japanese in Burma. They basically tried to make a deal with the Rohingya Muslims and they said, or this is their understanding, they said, if you help us defeat the Japanese here in Burma, then we'll give you your independence and the Rohingya Muslims will be in charge of Burma in the future. That's the Rohingya Muslims' claim. That's what they're saying happened. That's what they believe is the case. The Buddhists, that sect in Myanmar, they were allied with the Japanese during World War II. So after World War II, when the Japanese surrendered, the Rohingya Muslims came. They went to Britain and they said, all right, can you make good on your promise? Can you give us our independence? Where's our land to be free? And from their perspective, what they think happened is that the British government ignored that request and gave the Buddhists control of Burma. They were very upset about this and they claim that they were kind of pushed to the side. Then they claim that they made repeated requests to the British government to have their own land anywhere, somewhere. Give us a part of Pakistan, they said. Let us, the Rohingya people, have our land. The British government ignored this, and since then there's been a mujahideen that has fought against the government forces, and they've been attempting to secede for a long period of time. And they've had varying levels of success. Basically, from 1948 until 1962, the government was a military dictatorship. It was a martial law there to keep stability in Myanmar, in Burma at the time. So from 1962 till 2011, there was the military was in control. That's when they started very slowly creating room for democracy. And they very slowly in 2011 started opening up pathways to democracy. The US government in 2012 they had an ambassador. The US kind of started to have good cooperation. They started talking about maybe even restoring military cooperation between the US and Myanmar. And the country was turning to the US, asking them for help instead of China. And that's what the US wanted. But then when violence between the Buddhists and the Muslims began to resurge, this started to deteriorate their relations with the US because the US is trying to encourage democracy in the region. In 2016, there was increased levels of violence against the military in Myanmar. And you had a situation where there was a growing number of attacks against the Myanmar security forces. So in one instance, the insurgents used slingshots to kill a few guards, and then they looted a bunch of their weapons and gear in 2016. Then those insurgents continued to launch more coordinated and more deadly attacks against outposts along the India border. So you could see where the military, from their perspective, they are unhappy that they gave democracy to Myanmar, and maybe they were expecting that the people there would vote more for their USDP party, but that hasn't been happening. They've been instead voting for Miss Suu Kyi, who came to power from free elections in 2015. So if you're a government soldier in Myanmar and you're just a regular ground grunt there, I talk about this frequently. What is the perspective of the regular soldier in a conflict? I think I maybe oversimplified it the last few times because I made it sound like maybe soldiers just buy the political opinion when really, actually, I don't think soldiers are often buying into the political stance. I think what soldiers really are thinking is that they want what's best for their family and for their country. And it's a job to them a lot of times. It's a job that is a means to a better, hopefully having a better life for them, their family, and their neighbors and their community. I think that's really what it comes down to. But what they're being told is that if you're a grunt in the Myanmar security forces and you're being asked to put down these riots, then you're being told that there was widespread voter fraud happening and that you are protecting your government from falling into the hands of bad influences. The reason Myanmar is so strategically important is because of its access to the Bay of Bengal, which opens up into the Indian Ocean. And this route gives them access to import a lot of the oil from the Middle East. Without this ability to import oil from the Middle East to China, that would be a big problem for China, because there is a side of the argument that says that it's in China's interest for the military to take over there, because basically if the military is in control, then China has more influence in Myanmar. So you see, if we switch over to the conflict map for Myanmar, you can see that there's still firing with heavy artillery airstrikes in part of Myanmar for the fourth consecutive day as they try to put down these protests. Massive crowds of civilians protesting against the military dictatorship happening in northern Myanmar, and protesters against military dictatorship. Here we have a night strike with motorcycles were seen marching around town in defiance of military coup. If we go a little further south, there's an evening vigil today that's happening. Government is cracking down on the villagers for defending themselves, leading to tens of thousands fleeing their home. This is an interesting one. We see that the Myanmar's military says that it will heed regional pleas to stop violence only when the coup-hit country returns to stability, as fresh fighting erupted with a major ethnic rebel group along its eastern border. So when we look over at that fighting that's happening on the eastern border, we can see someone uploaded a video straight to Twitter showing where the violence is happening with the military. This just happened 8 hours ago, where an armed ethnic group was able to defeat the Myanmar military at an outpost within their own country. And we can see on Twitter people uploading video of the non-violent protests. So there's a lot of violent protests happening, or there's a lot of violent attacks against government forces happening, and a lot of protests, non-violent protests happening throughout the country. Please give the video a like and subscribe if you think this is a conversation worth having, whether you agree with me or not, because I'll tell you what, I actually like the people I don't agree with, because in the comment section, I get to learn every day about my blind spots. You guys hold me accountable. If I get something off, or if I have a perspective that I miss, I actually get to hear from those people. When we did the video on the Syrian war, we get to hear from Syrian soldiers. We get to hear from Russian soldiers and understand their perspective. That's what's exciting to me about this. Potentially in the future, I could see us having the opportunity to maybe do an interview or speak with a conversation with a Russian soldier and just try to understand how their viewpoint differs from mine. And with these videos, I'm not trying to tell you what to think. I'm not an expert. I'm an enthusiast. These conflicts interest me, and it's my goal to shed some light and some understanding on what's happening, because maybe you wouldn't know what's going on over in Myanmar right now and how it's huge. It's affecting the world currently. Thank you for taking the time to watch. If you have some insight on what's happening in Myanmar, please comment below. Let me know what your perspective is on the conflict and where you think it's going, because I'd be very curious to know.